let's talk about the parts of the solution. And before we get to talking about product features, which Octopus Deploy, again, I mentioned it's best of breed, and in my opinion, it's the absolute best product for covering all the needs for deploying anything to anywhere. But let's back up and let's talk about architecture. Architecture is conceptual in nature, and again, for simple scenarios, you know what? There's other products where they can deploy simple things and they work fine. All right, but your architecture needs to be scalable, not just for simple things, but it needs to account for your actual mission critical software systems, which are not just going to be a website and a database. They're going to have lots of things going on. They're going to have back-end jobs moving data. They're going to have durable storage queues. They're going to have complex caches. A lot of people, use Redis and the like. There's going to be a dozen different places to store data, not just SQL Server. So real mission-critical software systems have a lot of different types of processes that are coordinating together, and they're complex. But we can simplify that complexity by categorizing all of the piece parts and coming up with categories. And once we understand the categories of things that need to happen, then we can do a set of simple tasks, put together our completely automated DevOps environment, and the whole becomes simpler. So let me talk about the absolute necessary pieces of a complete DevOps environment. And we have to start a little bit before the automated deployment, just because there's prerequisites. And there's an analogy that is a common term in the industry called a DevOps pipeline. And that's really a good analogy because a pipeline invokes the idea of water. And it evokes the idea of flow and flow in one direction. And so let me start with where everything starts, so that we can get to this list. And that is your Git repository, your source control, your version control system. Everything stems from that. That is the headwaters of your pipeline. Everything flows from your source code. And I want to just run an aside, not really on topic for this webinar, but don't accidentally put multiple applications in the same Git repository, because every pattern, every product out there in the market is really designed to operate on the contents of one Git repository. And so if you have lots of different applications in a single Git repository with lots of teams, you're just going to be fighting it. So once you have that, the first step in your DevOps environment is your private build. The second step is your integration build, and then the third stage of continuous integration is your first test deployment. Let me talk about those as a group. And if you've never read the book written back in 2006, the title of the book was literally Continuous Integration, and it was the book published by Addison Wesley Publishers. And it was the book that defined continuous integration as a pattern. And that stood to this day. But some of the build servers, the getting started hello world sample is just point to a Git repository and then let it compile your code based on a trigger. Well, that needs to happen, but that is not alone continuous integration. Continuous integration is a three-phase pattern where we start with a private build on our local environment, then an integration build at the team level, and then that the end of the integration build, we need to package up a release candidate so that we can do a first test deployment. Continuous integration isn't in place until you're actually deploying your build to something to make sure that that program still starts up. Okay, then after that, then we can move into the actual automated deployment across environments on the way to production. And we need to create environments. We need to automate every step of everything that needs to be deployed. After we deploy, we need to do some type of smoke test to make sure that the deploying of that process, that it actually happened, that process actually started up and wasn't misconfigured in some way. And then after that, one critical element that needs to be in our DevOps architecture is full system tests of some sort in a fully deployed, properly configured environment that is the same shape as production. Doesn't have to be the same scale or the same size as production, but architecturally it needs to be the same shape as production. And then across all of our environments, production being the most important, we need monitoring and our observability capabilities to be configured. Open telemetry is gaining steam, which is fantastic in the industry, but we need to configure those things and have some tests as well. So these are the absolute table stakes to come to the table with DevOps, and the architecture of your overall development environment for your team needs to have these capabilities at a minimum.